Good morning and welcome to Writers Chat, where we talk about all things writers, writing rise, for writers, by writers. There you go. And this morning, we are thrilled to have Cheri Cowell with us. And I'm going to hand it over to my fantastic co-host, Melissa, in just a minute. But I wanted to introduce us. I'm Norma Poor. Our other co-hosts are Melissa Stroh and Brandy Bro. And we are so glad you're here this Tuesday morning. Melissa, why don't you introduce our guest?
Oh, absolutely. We're glad everyone's here, whether you're joining us live or on the recording, and know that you're going to just get a real treat today. Today we have Cheri Cowell, who is going to be sharing with us about writing articles. And if you don't know who Cheri is, I'm going to give you a little introduction to her. Cheri Cowell is the founder and owner of EABooks Publishing, the author of 4 traditionally published books and over 700 articles. In her local critique group, Cheri became known as the Article Queen. And on a personal note, Cheri and her husband Randy own luxury rental treehouses in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. And perhaps she can share a little more about that later on. And today, she's going to share with us how to write winning articles every time with the pyramid method. And if you haven't grabbed your handout, she's given some to us. And so those who are here live can go to the Writers Chat members group to find those in the file section, and I'll post a link in the chat. And so I'm going to turn this right over to you, Cheri. We're excited to hear from this today, especially since it's been a little while since we've talked about some nonfiction topics. And I know we have a lot of article writers in our group. So take it away.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I love talking about articles because I heard this stat early on in my writing career, and it is actually very true that you will reach more people with one article than you will probably ever reach with your book. And that is real humbling for those of us who've written books, because you spend a ton of time and hours and resources honing your craft to eventually get a book contract. And to think that all of those hours are only going to reach a few number of people when you could spend a little bit of time honing your craft, which today you are doing, to learn how to write winning articles every time. And the thing that I've learned about article writing is that there is a method. Those of you who like to just sit down and write by the seat of your pants, probably in your mind have this method going on. But now that you will have learned it, you will see that those articles that get published are following this method. So on the handout, you are going to see a triangle. The triangle or the pyramid is a way for us to see what is most important all the way down to the foundation, which is not least important, but it is going to give us the article in its entirety if we will follow the pyramid. So let's just start at the top of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid is the hook. And the hook is simply the main point that you want your readers to get. It is a way to hook your readers in, to grab them. It's something interesting. It is something that is maybe a quote. It could be a dialogue. You could start with dialogue. You can start with a stat that is just flabbergasting. There's many, many different ways of starting an article, but your hook is the way that you're going to bring the readers in, and it's going to grab your reader. So next is your theme sentence. Now, some of this might sound very familiar to your high school English class, and maybe some of you slept through that class, or maybe you had your eye on a guy or girl across the room and you weren't really paying much attention, but you do somewhat remember some of this. And this is exactly what your high school English teacher was teaching. It's the same thing. And so your theme sentence is going to be exactly that. It is telling your readers what you are writing about. It is stating what your main objective is. Next, you have the body of your article. It is 1 to 4 points. Now, when I first started teaching this class, way long ago, we're not going to say how many years and how old I am, but when I started teaching this class, there were up to 6 points. But unfortunately, today, readers have a shorter attention span. So now it is 1 to 4 points. Often it's just that wonderful 3. And sometimes you can stretch it to 4, but remember your readers are having a short attention span. So if your points can be very short and succinct, then that is very helpful to your readers. Sometimes if you are using such a principle as maybe you're spelling out a word and you have a point for each one of those letters in a word, then you can get away with a few more points because the word is actually helping them to remember the points. So you can get away with it then, but otherwise you need to stick to the 1 to 4 points. And that is the basic of the article. That's the heart of the article. Then next, you are going to have a summary or a restatement of the theme, a summary sentence, a restatement of the theme. And then finally, you are going to have a wrap up. A wrap up is, like I like to say, you put a bow on it. You are going to wrap that end of that article in some satisfying way so that the reader feels like they've had a complete meal. It's like putting the dessert at the end of the meal. It's like, gosh, that meal was great, but if I could have had a bite of ice cream at the end, it would have just been it. Or if I could have had a cherry on the top of that soda, ice cream sundae, it would have been perfect. That's what your wrap up is at the end. It's the cherry on top. All right, so let's kind of go into a little bit more detail on each one of these by looking at some examples. First I'm going to go back. Sorry about that. I forgot. So you need to make sure when you're doing your writing that you're including all of these points. But let me tell you, in writing, if you're kind of like me, you're going to start in the middle because you're going to start with your main points. It's kind of like me when I write an email. I write the email that I want to write. So it's the core message that I want to give to the person that I'm sending the email to. But then I go back in and I write the nice things at the beginning of the email because I'm a tell it like it is kind of girl. So, I write all of the stuff that's important in the email, and then I go back in and I write all of the nice things, and I remember at the end to tell them I hope they're having a blessed day, or I look forward to seeing you soon, or whatever those nicety things is. So that's what you're probably going to do with your article writing. So don't think that I'm giving you, this is how you write your article. This is how an article is structured. You're probably going to start with your points, and then you're going to go back in and add these other elements to create a full article. So now, before we jump into our examples, let me also say that one of the most often things that I see when I'm working with a new author, a new writer, is that they have everything that they know about a subject in their one article. They've written everything about parenting that they know in this one article. And what I see is maybe 2 or 3 articles in their one article. So what they haven't done is they haven't stuck to their main point. So perhaps the thing to do before you start writing is to write your theme sentence. Write what you are trying to communicate to your readers. What is your core takeaway that you want these readers to know about? So maybe it is not everything that I learned about parenting, but maybe the topic gets narrowed down to, here are 5 tips or 4 tips or 3 tips to tame the toddler tantrums while in the grocery store. All right. So now you've got a very narrow subject that you might think that you are excluding a whole bunch of people by making your subject narrow, but actually you are not. When you narrow your subject, you're broadening your audience. And this is how that works. When you narrow your subject, your takeaways become clearer, and your reader can then more easily apply your takeaways to their situation. They might not think, I have a toddler, but I have grandchildren. And I'm not in a grocery store with them, but I'm at the park. So they can easily take your ideas and transpose those to work in their own lives. Likewise, somebody who doesn't have children at all, maybe they work volunteer-wise at the VBS. And this is a great way for them to increase their ministry application. So if you narrow it, you are broadening your audience. Just remember that. Make sure that your focus is very narrow, and it will help you to reach more readers. The narrower you are and the more focused your article is on the needs of that particular reader. All right, so now let's turn to the examples, because I really believe that that's where the power of this comes to light. So let's start with the first example, which is Frozen Water Melted Hearts. This article was released about 10 different times as a first rights piece. And I teach another class on how it's reprints, rewrites. And that class teaches how you do that. But this article was first written and published for Chicken Soup for the Grandma's Soul. And then I took it and reprinted it as a first rights piece 10 different times. So this particular one was written for Faith and Friends, which is a take-home Sunday school paper. I love take-home Sunday school papers. And the reason I love those is because they need 52 brand new pieces every week. So, you know, they are looking for submissions for people like you and I that are writing articles, and they often pay. They don't pay a whole lot, but they do pay. And so where would you find this? You would find this in the Christian Writers Market Guide. The Christian Writers Market Guide should be on every single writer's desk. It is also, it's a print book, but it's also an online version. The Christian Writers Market Guide is divided into two parts. The front part is on book publishing, and the last part is periodicals, which is a fancy way of saying magazine articles, articles like what we are talking about today. And in the middle is a topical index. The topical index is how you would find the topics that you feel that you are called to write. And underneath each one of those topics is a list of the magazines that are looking for your submission. It's magical. So you want to get that book and use a yellow highlighter and highlight all of those and then begin submitting. And you're going to know how to write those articles after you take this class today. All right, so let's begin with the Frozen Water Melted Hearts. I'd like to turn the chat on now. And I'd like for Brandy and Melissa to help me with the chat. What we are looking for is for someone to identify what the hook is in this article. Can someone identify what the hook is in the article? Frozen Water Melted Hearts. I started with this one because the hook is pretty easy.
We may have some people that are hunting to open the article from the handouts.
That's okay. That's all right.
Facebook group.
So let me give you another hint while we're waiting for some comments there. The last thing on those points that I wanted to make sure that you are doing is the points need to tie directly to your theme sentence. If your points are not tied directly to the theme sentence, then probably that is an indication that you have another article to write. So take those, set them aside for your next article, and then find those points that tie directly to your theme sentence. It's not a bad thing to have more than the material that will go in that one article. That just means that you have more material for your next article, and that's great. That's wonderful. So the theme sentence. All right. So we've got my grandmother was losing her grip. We've got sick grandma taking care of others. We've got forgotten the pot on the stove. So our hook is actually that first words, the first words in this article. She's done it again. My grandmother has left yet another pot of water on the stove, dangerously simmering away unattended. So she's done it again is the hook. She's done it again is a great hook because whoever's reading that is thinking, what has she done? What has she done? They want to keep reading. The next sentence tells them a little bit more, but it continues the hook. It continues the hook. So those of you who said both of those are actually correct. Thank goodness we caught it in time. I whisper under my breath as I remove the scalded pot from the stove. So now I continue that thought in the next sentences. How could this happen? Maybe she received a phone call. I go on to explain, but the reality can't be ignored. Incidents like this are why our family has decided to place my grandmother in an assisted living facility. So now I have explained the hook. I've got the hook going. I've explained it. So now tell me, those of you that are reading it, what is the theme sentence? What is the theme sentence? Now, this might take a little bit longer to identify, so keep reading and you will find the theme sentence. So I'm ready for you to put that in the chat. You don't have to type the whole sentence. You can just kind of say a few first few words of the sentence that you are looking at. Okay, good, Sally. That's a good one. Waiting for others to chime in. So as you're reading, I want to encourage you to spend some time at a local bookstore. Barnes and Nobles is one of my favorites, but you might have some other bookstore near you. Probably not just a Christian bookstore, but a general market or secular bookstore would be the best, because you want to go into the magazine section. Take a spiral bound or a yellow pad with you, a notebook, and I want you just to spend about an hour in there looking at all of the magazines and pulling out the articles and trying to identify what these parts are. As you begin to do this, it's one of those exercises that will just change your writing. Because as you do it, it's going to kind of embed in your brain how articles are structured with this pyramid method, and how an excellent article kind of smooths the edges between the different parts. When you first start, you might get, a hook, and then you'll get a theme sentence, and then you're going to get your points, then you're going to get your summary, and then you're going to get your wrap up. But as you get better and better and better at writing, you are going to find that the edges between these parts are kind of murky. And that means that you have become an excellent writer. But you know what? These magazine editors, if they see the parts and pieces and they see that your edges are not quite so smooth, somewhere an editor is going to take a chance on you. And you know why? Because they see that you have the basics. They see that you're a good writer and that you're trying. And those first few editors who took a chance on me are forever my friends. They helped me so much, because what they did was they took a chance on me, and then they sent that article back with writing all over it. At that point, it was actually printed and it had red ink on it. They don't do it that way anymore, but it was quite intimidating when I got it back. But I was going to do this, and so I took it and I learned and I resubmitted and I got published. The same thing can happen to each of you. Just do it. Just submit. Even if it is rough around the edges, just submit. Somewhere along the line, an editor is going to take a chance on you, and it's going to launch your 700 articles like I have. So, all right. So we've got some ideas. So we've got, she's forgetting too many things and she could hurt herself. Incidents like this are why my family has decided to place her in assisted living. As I clean, memories of, and then grandmother was losing her grip. And then, Norma, you're so cute. That was not one of the answers to the questions, but thank you, Norma. Actually, as I clean is the actual theme sentence. As I clean, memories of, and then we're going on in the article, and now we are moving into the parts of the article that I wanted them to hear. So now I want you to move into the body of the article. So what are the takeaways here? And I'll give you a big hint. The editor has separated this out for you. She's given you a really big hint. So where do you think the main points of the article are? The editor did the work for you. How she laid the article out. Yep, it's in the subheading. What is the subheading?
Bittersweet burden and rich legacy.
Yes, yes, rich legacy, rich legacy. So before heading home that evening, my sister and I stopped to see my grandmother. So now we're talking about the legacy that she has left. So what is my point here? What is my point? Now, my point in this particular article is a story. Now, it's not a 1, 2, 3. My point is the story. So sometimes you can take your 1, 2, 3 points and you can create it in a story form. Mine is a story. And what is the one big point here? It is a sentence, and it's part in and it's explained in the story, but there is a sentence here that wraps it all up, that is a summary of the whole thing. So the point and the summary are in the story. So go ahead and share with me what you think this is. It's okay, Sally. You're not batting 1,000. You're not batting 0. You're doing all right. So after I tell the story, so I say, my grandmother says, on hot days, I always leave a frozen bottle of water for him tied to the post by the garbage can. Somebody needs to take care of him now that I'm gone. And the point is, my heart melts. In many ways, grandmother was forgetting important things, but she still remembered what was important. That is the point. That's the point. She was remembering what was most important, which is people. She's remembering someone else. That is the important point that I try to get out. So I go on to elaborate on that point in the next paragraph, and I give a scripture example for that point. So it's just one point. This whole article was a setup for that one point. So now I want you to look at that last paragraph, because the last paragraph is a summary and a wrap up. So tell me, what is the wrap up here? What is the wrap up? What is the cherry on top? All right, Sally, thank you for that. Mighty big shoes to fill. Sally, I appreciate you being here. You are truly batting 1,000, but I love you, sister. You are awesome. So there's a little bit more at the end. What is the final sentence? What is it that I'm saying there?
The last line. It's the last line.
What a beautiful world we would live in. Think about that. What a beautiful world we would live in if everyone cared about others, including the garbage collector, including the least of these. You know, I didn't say it that way, but that's what it says, including the garbage collector, the people that nobody even thinks about. So So thank you, Kathy, that I'm glad you were a journalist and had to deal with this in and out. So I am sure you are cheering me on. Please submit, just submit. And an editor will love it if they see that you are working at your craft. They will notice the parts and pieces, and they can work with you. They will love that. They will appreciate that. So now we're going to go to a totally different kind of an article, a more excellent way. We're not going to go piece by piece through this, but I just want to start off by pointing out all the different pieces in this one so that you can see that this one's structured differently than the last one. The last one was a story. This one is more of a teaching article. And so it's a slightly different process than the previous one. So in this one, we start off with our hook sentence. If a billboard that read "School of Love" were erected on your church lawn, what changes would need to be made to fulfill this mission? Ouch. Ouch. So now all people who are attending church, especially those who are church leaders, are very interested in what I have to say, because our heart's desire is to be that. But are we practicing it is what this article is about. So does the community surrounding your church identify it as where one learns how to love? That is the theme sentence. That's the theme sentence. So we have the hook and the theme sentence right away. So now I begin my body of the article. This next paragraph is the intro to the body. The body is looking at 12 to understand 13. So I begin by looking at chapter 12, and then I move on to the focus is love. So now I have 12 and I have 13 that I'm looking at. That is the outline. And so I then move on to the supremacy of love. Do you see how these are broken down by subheadings? And then if you turn to the very end, you are going to now see in my final paragraph, so like Wesley, Paul encourages his parishioners to choose the way of love. When we read chapter 13 in light of chapter 12, we see that Paul wants us to know that love is a more excellent way for Christians to use their spiritual gifts. So that is a summary of what the article has told them. That's the summary. And then I close it with this sentence: perhaps if more of us choose this higher, more excellent way, as Wesley and Paul are advocating, our churches will indeed become known as the place where love is learned and displayed, a school of love. That's the cherry on top. I like this kind of an ending because this is called a circle ending. A circle ending is where you have started out with a title or a sentence at the beginning, and your ending circles around back and connects directly to what that was. And what that does for the reader when they're reading is it's satisfying. It's very satisfying. A circle reading is very satisfying. Now, you don't always want to deliver satisfaction. Sometimes dissatisfaction is what you want. You want a challenge, or sometimes you want to poke the bear. Those are all satisfactory ways of ending an article. Those are also satisfying, but they're satisfying in a discordant way. They're satisfying in a way that leaves you pondering, questioning, maybe a little agitated. That's good because you're provoking a reaction. And hopefully it's the reaction that you're looking for. So those satisfying endings, one way or the other, is always a good thing. So now let's look at the final one, the final
Before
example.
you move to that one, could you take a moment, because I
Yes.
noticed in the formatting of this one that you put pull quotes underneath your subheadings and a sidebar at the end. Would you take a moment and just talk about those elements of an article?
Absolutely. So when
Thanks.
you use the Christian Writers Market Guide, you are going to be directed to their writers' guidelines. So in the back of the book, each magazine has listed exactly how to receive a copy of their writers' guidelines and free copies of the magazine, because they want you to have read several issues so that you know exactly what kind of writing they are looking for. You know, understand their reader, you understand their personality, because each magazine has their own personality. In the writer's guidelines, they're going to tell you exactly what they require. This particular magazine that I wrote for this article for requested pull quotes and sidebars. So sidebars are those extra pieces that you've seen. So maybe the article is written here, and then off to the side is some additional information. In this particular magazine, it was for leaders and ministry personnel. So they were looking for very kind of somewhat nerdy, heady kind of sidebars, but sometimes sidebars can be recipes, they can be crosswords, they can be all kinds of things. So sidebars are a lot of fun. They can be a lot of fun. You can use quotes, you can use all kinds of things as sidebars. Another word for sidebars is fillers. Fillers. So fillers are exactly that. They fill up the page. So when the editor is laying out the magazine, perhaps the total word count to fill up that page would be 1,000 words, but the article is 750. So now they have 250 more words to fill up that page. And so they turn to their fillers to fill the page, or they use the sidebars that the author has submitted with the magazine article. The pull quotes are your quotables pulled out of each section. And for this particular magazine, they told me for every 250 words, they wanted a pull quote. So it was very easy to figure out, okay, from this section, what is my quotable? And so you pull those out, you put those in brackets, you label them as pull quote. Similarly with your sidebars at the end, you say sidebar and you tell what your word count is, because the word count tells the editor whether or not they have the space for that in the layout of their magazine. If they don't have the space for that, they might save your sidebar and use it for another article later on, for which they will pay you for. So it's a win-win. You can also submit fillers independently of an article. And there's a whole section in the Christian Writers Market Guide on who is accepting fillers only. So most magazines are looking for fillers. So you can just submit up to 10 fillers at any one time. Make sure you put your contact information on your fillers so that they can pay you for them. And they will pay you right away if they accept them. That doesn't mean that they're going to publish them right away. That means that they are going to accept them. So sometimes I go out to my mailbox and I receive a magazine. And I think, I didn't submit an article to that magazine. So now I'm hide and seeking. I'm looking through the magazine to see what filler they used, because that's exactly what has happened. They've used a filler. And like I said, fillers can be puzzles, they can be recipes, they can be word searches, they can be all kinds of things. So look in the Christian Writers Market Guide for those things. So Brandy, thank you for that question. That's awesome. So our
Thank you.
last article that I want to show you is Diamonds in the Dust. Diamonds in the Dust is actually one of those things that was, it started out as a presentation that I use. So I go to senior centers and I do this presentation. It's called Diamonds in the Dust. It's just a wonderful uplifting piece for seniors. And so then I took that piece and created it as an article. And so there's a little bit difference when you go from speaking to writing, because your facial expressions and your pauses and all of those things need to be interpreted in words rather than using your body language. So you do need to do some work. You can't just transpose directly because it just doesn't work that way. But you can take your speaking engagements and turn them into written articles. So this one is Diamonds in the Dust, How to Shine in the Midst of Life's Dust. So in my title, I am giving you the takeaway. I am giving you the theme sentence, which is how to shine in the midst of life's dust. So I'm giving that to you in my title. My hook is, sometimes I'm so busy and life seems to overflow with so many good things that I don't notice the dust accumulating around me. Then there are times in my life when all I can see is dust. That's the hook. How many people can identify with that? So this was submitted to Senior Living magazines. And of course, they gobbled that up because that's exactly the way they feel. So then I elaborate on that. And then I say, are you weighted down by the kinds of dirt and dust as your copy table is with that layer your kids are now drawing pictures in? Did you know there are diamonds hidden in that dust? Here are a few steps you can take to help you shine in the midst of life's dust. And I've used the word shine for each one of my points. Then at the end, I say, however, shining in the dust means sometimes looking at dust in a new way. Sometimes we need the help of a friend. And these friends are true diamonds when they help us to choose to look at the hurts in our lives as a chance to become more compassionate. A job loss is a chance to start anew, and worries about the future is a chance to become more grateful. That is my summary. That's the summary. So then I wrap it up with a bow on it. So if you are like me and find that you see emotional dust balls, then you care to see, turn those dust balls into dust bunnies by taking a few of the simple steps we've discussed here, and then you can begin to shine in the midst of the dust. Nice cherry on top. And again, another sidebar, just in case they want to pay me a little extra. All right. Well, I have so enjoyed being here with you and explaining about this article writing process. I hope that you will take my advice and go to your local bookstore and examine all of the periodicals and magazines there. And then I truly hope you will be brave enough to submit Submit. You know, you can't get published unless you first submit. Thanks everybody for allowing me to be here. I'm Cheri Cowell, and you can email me at Cheri@EABooks. Make sure there's an S in there, EABooksPublishing.com. We'll put that in the chat for you so that you know how to reach me. If you have any questions, I'm here to encourage you. And I hope I will see you at a Christian Writers Conference soon.
Do you have time to answer any questions that our
There we
guests that are
go.
in the
That
house
sounds
have?
great.
All right. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, but we do welcome everybody to come back on so we can see your lovely faces, and then you can ask in person if you have them. One thing that I would kind of like to ask you is the difference between, like, say, informational articles and personal experience articles.
Mm-hmm. So informational articles follow the same format. They have the same elements, but informational articles are a little more to the point. So they're going to use stats. They're going to use quotes. They're going to sound a little more scholarly. So they don't have all of the experiences, all the warm fuzzies in them. But they follow the same exact format. So once you learn this pyramid method of writing articles, it translates no matter if you're doing journalistic work, if you're doing personal experience, or you are doing research kind of articles. You are going to have a hook. You're going to have your theme sentence. You're going to have your main points. And sometimes your main points are long, you know, because those scholarly articles, those people are used to 2,500 word articles. You know, they're not limited to 750 words. They do 1,500 word articles. When I first started, every magazine article was about 1,500. Now the max is usually 750. I'm amazed when we can get up to 1,000 words. That's exciting, you know, when we get 1,000 words to express our whole points. But yeah, it's getting less and less because people's attention spans are shorter and shorter.
Kathy, a lot of our, excuse me, or Cheri, I'm sorry, I was looking at Kathy in
Okay.
the picture. Sorry about that. Good to see you, Kathy. Cheri, now a lot of our people are maybe going to the Florida Christian Writers Conference. Are you going to be there this year?
I will be there, and I'm excited about it. I am teaching a couple of article writing classes, so maybe you will look those up. And you know, we have the children's workshop before that, and so those of you who write for children will definitely want to take advantage of that. We do publish children's books, so if you are looking for a publisher, I am taking appointments, but either way, just come up and introduce yourself to me and tell me that you saw me on this. I would love to meet you in person.
Fantastic. Now you have a submission call out for those at the conference. Is that true?
We do. We have a submission call out for those attending the conference, and all of those writers' guidelines are there on their website. And I would love to see your submission for this anthology. An anthology is a collection of stories. In our case, we are doing stories, which is what we've just gone over here. We've done stories. We also accept poetry, devotionals, even some short flash fiction. So those of you who write all different kinds of genres, we welcome you to submit. It does need to stick to the theme, and you can read all about that on the Writer's Guidelines. And I just want to say a little tip about Writer's Guidelines. Writer's Guidelines are the editor telling you exactly how to win their hearts. So follow the writer's guidelines. You know, when I would sit on a panel at a writers' conference on magazine article writing, they'd ask us what our #1 pet peeve is, and every editor would say, not following the guidelines. Not following the guidelines. So if you want to get published, the #1 way is to follow the guidelines. They've taken time to write out exactly how to win their hearts. So do exactly as they say, and don't say, I know I read in your guidelines that you wanted only 750 words, but I just knew you would accept 850. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not what the writer's guidelines say. Follow the guidelines and you will win that editor's heart, even if your writing is not spectacular. If you have followed what I've shared today and you follow the guidelines, you will win an editor's heart. I promise you. It just works that way.
Guidelines, guidelines, guidelines. They need to be followed. And I
Yes.
always believed that, but once I became the editor of the blog site, Almost an Author, I understood how vital that is and get so frustrated when people, oh, I read your guidelines and then ignore them. And
Yes.
that's even worse than you would be better off to say, here's my thing. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to read your guidelines. I would rather hear that than, oh, I read your guidelines and then don't submit accordingly. It just,
Yes. Yes. So, you know, we're at a Christian Writers Conference for the Florida Christian Writers Conference. So it just, it would blow my mind if you chose not to read the guidelines and follow them. Just saying, if you're hoping to get included in the anthology, you know, an anthology again is kind of like a chicken soup book. So that's what an anthology is.
Do you have tips for helping authors find expert sources for quotes?
Expert sources for quotes. Well, first of all, I would tell you that all those quote places on the internet are not experts. That would not be an expert source. When you Google quotes for, probably not an expert source. Now, what you can do is you can use those as a jumping off place. If you find a quote on the internet, take it, copy it, then you can use the internet to find the original source. You want to find the original source. It's probably a book, and then you can properly cite it. And each magazine will tell you what style guide they're using, but most Christian publishers are using the, oh my goodness, I just went totally blank. The
MLA?
Oh no, I just went
Chicago?
blank. AP. It is the Chicago. No, it's not Chicago.
A lot of them are AP.
AP?
No, not AP. I will come back to it when my
Are you
brain.
talking about Chicago Manual of Style?
Chicago Manual of Style. Okay. The Chicago Manual of Style is the one that Christian magazine publishers are using. And there is a Cliff Notes version for Christians. And it is put out by Steve Lobby, is the same person who puts out the Christian Writers Market Guide. And so you can get a copy of that, because the Chicago Manual of Style is a little overwhelming and intimidating if you were to get a copy of that and try to interpret it yourself. But I will tell you that there are websites out there that you can take a quote, put it into these websites, and it will tell you exactly how to properly cite it in the different styles. So you can use that, and those sources are really good. They're usually through a college or university. And those are good sources because they're used to helping, people in universities write papers. So they can properly cite for you using whatever style guide the writer's guidelines are telling you to use.
And any tips for helping us find experts that we can interview for the article?
Yes, there is. There's one that's called experts. Hold on, I've got to think of it. Experts. And then Find a Reporter is another one. Find a Reporter. It's probably Find an Expert. I will send those to you, Melissa. How does that
Bitsy
sound?
mentioned Ask an Expert. Is that it?
Ask an Expert. Thank you. Ask an Expert and
Thank you,
Find a
Bitsy.
Reporter. Yes, thank you, thank you. Ask an Expert, Find a Reporter. Both of those I've used to, for instance, one time I was writing an archaeology paper or an archaeology article, and I wanted a quote from an archaeologist, and I specifically wanted an archaeologist in Israel. And I actually went out on Find a Reporter and made this wonderful connection with this archaeologist. And when I actually went to Israel as a journalist, a Christian journalist, went to Israel, goodness, what a wonderful experience. I was actually able to meet this archaeologist over there. So it was real exciting. So yes, ask an expert.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Cheri? Right.
Everybody's going to be an expert now.
Right?
You covered a lot of good material. Thank you.
You're
Absolutely.
welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. If there's no more questions, Melissa or Brandy, do you have anything to add before we wrap up for today?
I don't think I do.
Yep. Join us next week. We're going to have another fun Come Write With Us episode where we'll be learning some techniques on describing things to help add to setting and scenes in your work, whether you write nonfiction or fiction. It'll be some great information to help you put that together. So we're looking forward to sharing that with you next time.
With some hands-on writing time.
Yes. So you get to practice. And if you really want to, you can even share some of your writing with us. We always open that up, but we don't pressure. It's all for fun.
Yeah, well, thank you, Melissa, for sharing that. And those that are here with us live today, thank you so much for being here. Cheri, most of all, thank you for being our guest today. And wow, what a wealth of information. I'm sure this will be one that many of us will go back and watch the replay because there's just so much fantastic insight and information shared. Thank you, Cheri, so much. And if you are watching the replay and you have a Tuesday available, be sure to join us. We're here every Tuesday. Well, let me correct myself. Almost every Tuesday, except for holidays, at 11 a.m. Eastern. And as our beloved co-host Johnny Alexander says, go around the globe to find your time zone. And we will see you next week. Those of you here, be sure to hang on for the after party. Have a great day.